Okay, the dough is finally done developing. We're ready to make pizza. The oven has been on for an hour, so it's super hot. And so let's get started. So take a look at the dough. It's puffed up again, which is what we want. I'm gonna make the pizza directly on the peel that I'm gonna use to transfer it to the hot steel plate inside the oven. I'm gonna first dust it with plenty of flour so it doesn't stick. The last thing you want is for the dough to stick to the peel when you're trying to put it in the oven. You want to be super gentle with the dough. You don't want to pop the bubbles. You want to gently take it out and transfer it. And get a little flour on both sides. And the first thing you want to do is compress it only in the center. The edge is going to be the crust, and you really want the bubbles to be in the crust, because you want, what I want is a light, puffy crust around the edges. So what you do is you tap it and you press it down in the center only. You leave the edge alone, because that's going to be your nice, puffy, crisp crust. Once you've pressed the center part down, compressed it, then you pick it up and you start turning it in your hands. But I want to make sure that that's flour there. Okay, so now let me get a little more flour on it. What I'm doing now is I'm trying to stretch it gently by turning it this way, so that the diameter of this circle gets bigger and bigger as I go. And I'm just letting it stretch by hanging off of my hands. So I'm not stretching it by separating my hands, I'm just letting it by its own weight stretch. You can see that it's already bigger now. And again, I want to make sure that it's not going to stick to the peel, so getting a little more flour on there. It's getting bigger, but it's delicate. You don't want to tear it either. Alright, it's getting close. I want it to be a little bigger though. Sometimes it doesn't come out to be a perfect circle like this time, but it's getting there. But it's getting super thin in the center. You can probably see that it's almost transparent, but it's still relatively thick around the edges. That's going to be where the crust is going to be nice and puffed up. Okay, I think that's about the best I can do. So, this is a trick from the Pizzeria Mozza. I'm gonna paint the crust with a bit of olive oil. I think this helps transfer heat to the crust to help it develop. Who knows? I don't know. They do it, so I do it. Okay. Right, so now I want to make sure that it's not stuck to the board, so I do a little slide test by doing that. It looks like it's ready to slide. I'm going to do this quickly. Open it up, slide it off. So now I want to cook it. Oh, this is, you notice that I put it in the oven before putting any toppings on. What? Yeah, that's another secret to getting thin, crispy pizza at home. Cook it on its own for the first 4 minutes in the oven by itself. And I'm gonna take it out, put the toppings on, and then cook it again for another 4 minutes. And that gives you the nice, perfect, thin, crispy pizza. It's been about 3.5 minutes. And take it out of the oven. I put it on a cooling rack. Why is that? Because it's very hot and it's also emitting steam. And so if you put it on a solid surface, it's just gonna steam itself and get soggy on the bottom. That's why it's important to put it on a cooling rack. If you don't believe me, take some toast, put the toast directly on a plate, and then a minute or two later you'll see a bunch of condensed water on the bottom of it, and the bottom surface of the toast will be soggy. So that's why it's important to put it on a cooling rack. So now we're gonna put the toppings on. A very thin layer of toppings. Less is better in my opinion, because you don't want to overload it. This is a very thin crust pizza. And if you overload it, it's gonna be a mess.
What type of sauce is that?
This is crushed San Marzano tomatoes and nothing else. You want some nice acidity from the tomatoes, and just straight out of the can is good. I'm also using, so it's already been cooked, so the crust is firm. So rather than using the ladle, I use a basting brush to distribute a thin layer of sauce. I like to get the crust a bit dirty, but not too dirty. That seems, I don't know, does it look like enough for you?
Yes.
Okay. We do need a bit of salt though, so I'm going to take a pinch of kosher salt and just distribute that. Not too much cheese. So I took some fresh mozzarella, cut it up into small cubes, and again, less is usually better. So
That's good.
okay. So for another 3.5 to 4 minutes. So I cooked it bare for 3.5 minutes. By another 3.5 minutes to 4 minutes, the crust should be getting deep brown, and the topping should be fully melted and all that. So now we wait. Recording.
Action!
All right, it's been another 4 minutes in the oven. Time to take the pizza out. Again, let it cool on a cooling rack, because you don't want the bottom to steam itself and get a soggy crust. But I'm pretty pleased with how this one turned out. You can see that there's nice browning on the crust. It's nice and poofy. So let's let it sit for a minute. Okay, so it's been cooling for 1.5 minutes or so on the cooling rack. I'm now going to put it on a cutting board and cut it. I don't use one of those wheel things, I just use a chef's knife. You can hear how crunchy the crust is. And look at the crust. That's exactly what I wanted. And look at how crisp it is. It stands up on its own. So this was a successful pie. So, buon appetito!